Lieutenant Marcus Hale had always believed that space was a cold, empty place. Endless stars, endless silence, and endless orders. He had been a soldier for most of his adult life, trained to follow commands and survive in the vacuum between worlds. For him, the galaxy wasn't about beauty or wonder. It was about duty, about holding the line, about surviving. But everything changed when he met her. Her name was Sira, a communications officer from the Therian species. She was tall, slender, and covered in fine, pale feathers that shimmered softly under the ship's lights. Her eyes were large and silver, reflecting everything like mirrors. She spoke slowly, carefully, as if every word carried weight. And when she smiled, rare and small, it felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. Marcus had never met anyone like her. They served together on the exploration vessel Aurora's Reach, one of the first joint missions between humans and Therians after years of bitter war. The two races had once fought fiercely. Humans had called the Therians the ghost birds of the void. But peace had come, thin and fragile, and now they were trying to learn from each other. At first, Marcus didn't trust her. He still carried memories of the war, friends lost, ships burned, the haunting songs of Therian war cries echoing through broken comms. But Sira wasn't like that. She was patient, soft-spoken, and strangely kind. She never argued, never raised her voice. When she looked at him, it wasn't with fear or anger. It was curiosity. She often asked questions about humans, endless questions that sometimes made Marcus laugh. "Why do humans dance when there is no reason?" she asked once. "Because sometimes joy doesn't need a reason," Marcus replied. "And laughter?" She tilted her head. "It is strange. You laugh even when you hurt." "Yeah," he said quietly. "It's how we survive pain." She had stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to understand a puzzle that didn't fit in her world. Over the months, they worked side by side. Marcus found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. How she moved with quiet grace, how her hands trembled slightly when she handled delicate wires, how her feathers caught the ship's glow like tiny stars. He told himself it was just curiosity, just the fascination of two species trying to understand each other. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Sometimes, when they shared meals in the dim light of the mess hall, they would talk long after everyone else had gone. She would tell him about her home world, skies full of crystal clouds, songs that carried across oceans. He would tell her about Earth, about rain, about crowded cities, about the smell of coffee in the morning. She once said softly, "You humans live so fast. You burn so bright." He smiled. "Maybe, but you shine longer." She blinked at that, feathers ruffling slightly, unsure whether it was a compliment or poetry. The crew often teased Marcus about how much time he spent with her. "Careful, Lieutenant," they'd laugh. "You're gonna make her fall for you." He'd laugh back, shake his head, but inside, the idea didn't sound so impossible anymore. There was a night, or what passed for night aboard a ship that never saw a sunrise, when Marcus and Sira stood together at the viewing deck. The stars stretched endless before them, silent, cold, beautiful. Sira broke the quiet first. "Do you ever feel small among them?" she asked. "Every day," Marcus said. "But somehow that makes life mean more." She nodded slowly. "On my world, we say that every soul is a spark from the same sky. But when I see your people, I think humans burn from something different, something deeper." Her words stayed with him long after she left the deck. In that vast loneliness of space, Marcus began to realize that Sira wasn't just another crewmate. She had become the only warmth that reached him out there. He started looking forward to her soft voice over the comms, to her gentle laughter when he mispronounced Therian words, to the quiet peace that came when she was near. He didn't understand it. This feeling that grew without warning, without permission, but it was real. And maybe, just maybe, in the silence between stars, a human soldier and a silver-eyed alien could find something more than duty, something like friendship, something like love. Marcus didn't know it yet, but his life and hers were about to change forever. Because soon, in one quiet moment, he would say something simple, something human, and her gentle answer would stun him in ways the universe never could. The day started quiet. Too quiet. The stars outside the ship glowed like frozen fire, and the Aurora's Reach drifted through empty space, carrying a silence that felt almost sacred. Marcus Hale liked days like this. No battles, no alarms, just the soft hum of the engines and the faint sound of distant machinery. He was working with Sierra again, fixing a malfunctioning communications relay near the outer hull. The two of them floated outside the ship in their suits, the vast galaxy all around them. To most people, it would have felt terrifying. But Marcus found peace in it, and in her company. Through the comlink, her calm voice filled his helmet. "Lieutenant, the signal frequency is still unstable. Adjust the lower transmitter by 3 degrees. "Roger that," Marcus said, grinning to himself. "You know, you sound more human every day, Sierra. Is that a good thing?" she asked. He chuckled. "Depends on the human." She was silent for a few seconds and then said softly, "I try to learn." "Your language is full of emotion. Every word can carry more than one meaning. It is beautiful but dangerous," Marcus smiled. "You got that right." He twisted a bolt into place and looked up, seeing her silhouette floating against a sea of stars. Her silver feathers shimmered under the ship's lights, almost glowing. She moved with careful precision, no wasted motion, no fear. Watching her, Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. That same warmth he didn't know how to name. He tried to shake it off. He wasn't supposed to feel this way. Humans and Therians didn't do that, at least not yet. The treaty between their species was still new, fragile, full of politics and rules. Love wasn't on the list of acceptable outcomes. But feelings didn't care about treaties. He decided to make a joke just to lighten the air, to hide the silence growing heavy between them. "Hey, Sierra," he said with a grin. "You know you'd make a cute wife. Calm, smart, always right. The full package." He meant it as a tease and a human kind of humor, light-hearted and harmless, something he'd say to any friend. But the moment the words left his mouth, the silence changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was still, heavy. Sierra stopped moving. Her hands froze above the console. The only sound was the soft breathing inside their helmets. Marcus frowned. Sierra? You okay?" Her voice came through after a moment, quiet and unsure. "You think so?" That simple question hit Marcus harder than he expected. Something about the tone, not angry, not offended, but fragile. He tried to laugh it off. "Yeah, of course. I mean, it's just an Earth saying. You know, like, it means you're nice, dependable, someone people would love to be around." "I see," she said softly. A human way of showing respect. Through jest. Her words were calm, but Marcus could hear something beneath them. A hint of confusion, maybe even hurt. They worked in silence after that, only the mechanical clicks and hums filling the air. Marcus wanted to take the words back to explain that he hadn't meant anything strange by them, but he didn't know how. He'd seen enough in her eyes before, that deep, searching look that made him feel like she could see right through him. When they finished repairing the relay, they floated together toward the airlock. The ship loomed large beneath them like a metal mountain against the sea of stars. The Earthborn sun badge on Marcus's suit glimmered faintly in the starlight. Inside, when they removed their helmets, the silence between them didn't fade. She placed her tools gently on the rack, her movements slow and careful. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "Hey, listen. About what I said out there." She turned to face him. "You did not offend me, Marcus Hale," she said softly. "But, in my people's language, words like that are never said lightly." He blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" Her silver eyes met his. "To call someone a life partner, a mate or a wife, is to promise your spirit to theirs, even if death comes. It is not a joke for us, it is sacred." Marcus's heart skipped. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Seeing his struggle, Sierra smiled, a small, gentle smile that made his throat tighten. "Do not worry," she said quietly. "You did not mean it that way. Humans use light words for heavy things. I understand now." He felt a strange ache in his chest, guilt, confusion, and something else he couldn't name. "Still," he said softly, "I didn't mean to sound careless." Her feathers shimmered faintly as she tilted her head. "You were kind. Even if you did not mean the bond, the thought of it was warm. No one has ever said I could be loved before." Marcus stared at her, stunned into silence. He'd been through war, seen people die, seen stars explode. But nothing hit him harder than those quiet words. When she turned and walked away down the corridor, the light catching her feathers like a fading sunrise, Marcus realized something had changed. Not just between them, but inside him. He had meant it as a joke. But now it didn't feel like one anymore. After that day, something changed between Marcus and Sierra. It wasn't bad, just different. The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was full of unspoken things. They still worked side by side, still shared meals, still talked about stars and stories and strange human customs. But now, every time Marcus looked at her, the memory of that moment, "You'd be a cute wife," and came rushing back. And every time she looked at him, he could see the faint shimmer in her eyes, like she was remembering it too. He told himself it didn't matter, that it had just been an innocent misunderstanding. But his heart knew better. Something inside him had shifted, something quiet and stubborn that refused to leave. One evening, he found her alone in the observation bay. The wide glass window stretched out before her, showing a sea of stars. Her feathers glowed faintly blue under the ship's lights. She didn't turn as he entered, but he could tell she knew he was there. "Couldn't sleep either?" Marcus asked gently. She shook her head. "I was listening." "To what?" "The silence," she said. "It speaks more than sound does." He stepped closer, standing beside her. For a while, neither spoke. The stars looked so close they almost seemed to breathe. Finally, Marcus broke the quiet. "Sierra, I've been thinking about what you said. About your people, and the way you see love." Her head tilted slightly, her silver eyes reflecting him. "It is not only about love," she said softly. "It is about connection. When a Therian calls another their life bond, it means they choose to protect that person's spirit, to share their breath, their strength, their silence, until the stars forget their names." Her voice was calm, but her words carried something heavy and ancient. Marcus felt it sink deep into his chest. He swallowed hard. "That's beautiful," he said. "Humans, we don't always treat words that carefully. We say things to make each other laugh, or to hide what we really feel." She nodded slowly. "Yes, you hide pain with humor. It is strange, but also brave." Her gaze drifted back to the stars. "When you said I would be a cute wife," she said softly, "it did not hurt me. It only surprised me." Marcus felt his stomach twist. "I didn't mean to offend you, Sierra. I know," she said, turning to face him now. Her feathers shimmered faintly, silver against the dark glass. "You were kind, and careless, but not cruel." He looked down, feeling both ashamed and grateful at the same time. "I just didn't realize that kind of thing meant so much in your culture." "It means everything," she said gently. "When you said it, I thought of what it would mean if a Therian said it to me. It is a vow, a promise of safety, of peace. No one has ever looked at me that way before." Marcus looked up sharply. "You mean no one's ever said you could be loved?" She smiled, that soft, small smile that always broke him a little inside. "I was raised as a voice for the fleet. Therians like me are trained to listen, not to be heard. We guide others, but we do not belong to anyone. I accepted that long ago." He stared at her, unsure what to say. The thought of her, kind, gentle Sierra, believing she didn't deserve love, made something ache deep inside him. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that anyone who looked at her would see something worth loving, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he said quietly, "If I had known, I would have chosen better words." Her eyes softened. "No," she whispered. "If you had chosen different words, perhaps I would never have learned how a human sees me." Marcus frowned slightly. "And how do we see you?" Her voice was calm, but the weight of it sank into him like gravity, as something that could be loved, even for a heartbeat. He felt the air leave his lungs. He didn't know how to answer. Sierra turned back to the stars, her reflection glimmering beside his. "In my language," and she continued softly, "if someone says what you said, the answer must always come from truth. So I will give you my answer." Marcus looked at her, his heart pounding. "Your answer?" She nodded. "Yes." She turned her head slightly toward him, silver eyes bright and endless. "If I were what you said, well, if I were a wife, then I would protect you even when the stars go dark." Her voice trembled slightly at the end. Not from fear, but from honesty. Marcus froze. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Her words weren't flirtation. They weren't a tease. They were a promise, one she didn't even need to make. "Sierra," he whispered, but she shook her head gently. "Do not answer," she said. "Humans speak quickly. Therians listen slowly. One day you will understand." and with that she turned and left the observation deck, her feathers catching the dim light like falling silver dust. Marcus stood there for a long time, staring at the stars. He had thought it was just a joke, and a simple human joke. But her answer had changed everything. It wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was the beginning of something neither of them could undo. Months passed quietly after that night in the observation deck. The Aurora's reach drifted through unexplored space, mapping nebulae and forgotten moons. The crew grew comfortable again, laughter returning to the halls, music echoing faintly in the mess rooms. But between Marcus and Sira, something unspoken lingered, gentle, steady, and real. They never talked about the cute wife moment again. They didn't have to. Every look, every word, every small smile carried meaning now. Sometimes Marcus would find her waiting for him at breakfast, a cup of bitter Therian brew already set at his seat. Sometimes she would find small human trinkets on her desk. Old earth coins, a carved wooden bird, a single flower from hydroponics. It wasn't romance in the way humans knew it. It was quieter, but it was there. Then one morning everything changed. The ship's alarms broke the calm, a sudden shrieking wail that shook everyone from sleep. Red lights flashed across the corridors. The captain's voice came through the intercom, sharp and grave. Battle stations. Unknown ships approaching fast. Coordinates 79-2, prepare for engagement. Marcus jumped from his bunk, his heart hammering. The air was thick with fear, that heavy familiar taste of war. He hadn't heard it in years, but it returned like an old nightmare. He sprinted to the weapons deck, his boots echoing on the metal floor. The ship vibrated under his feet as engines roared to full power. Sira was already at her station in communications, feathers bristling with tension. "What's happening?" he demanded. Her hands moved fast over the console. Multiple signatures. Raider class. Not Therian. Not human. Unknown. Pirates? She hesitated. No, too organized. Too many ships. Marcus stared at the screen. Black dots blinked closer, forming a crescent around the Aurora's reach. Whoever they were ready for a kill. The first blast hit before the captain could speak again. The ship shook violently, lights flickering. The floor beneath them cracked open, sending sparks across the deck. Sira gripped the console, steadying herself. "Shields at 40%. Reroute power," Marcus shouted. "We'll lose the engines." "I'm trying," she said, her voice breaking through static. The second hit came harder, tearing through the outer hull. Fire alarms screamed. Someone on the bridge shouted orders, but the words were lost in chaos. Marcus ran toward the control terminal, trying to seal the damaged sections. He turned and saw Sira still at her post, refusing to move even as smoke filled the air. "Sira," he shouted. "We have to go. That section's collapsing. I can send a distress signal," she yelled back. "If I stop now, no one will hear us. Forget the signal." He ran toward her, coughing through smoke. "We'll die if we stay here." But she didn't move. Her hands flew across the panel, her silver eyes focused, glowing faintly from the heat around her. "Almost there," she whispered. Just a few more seconds. Marcus reached her just as an explosion ripped through the wall. He tackled her down, shielding her with his body. Metal shrapnel flew past them, slicing through the console. Sparks showered around them like burning rain. She gasped, the wind knocked out of her. He could feel her trembling. "Sira, are you hurt?" She looked up at him. Her feathers blackened, a thin stream of silver blood tracing down her cheek. But she smiled faintly. "The signal." "Sent." He looked at her in disbelief. "You risked your life for that?" Her breathing was shallow, but her voice was steady. "I risked it for you. For all of you. That is what a mate does, isn't it?" Marcus froze. Her words cut through the chaos, through the roar of fire and alarms. He remembered her gentle voice months ago. "If I were a wife, I would protect you even when the stars go dark." She had meant it. Every word. He felt something inside him break open, fear, love, anger, all mixing into one raw ache. "You're not dying here," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm getting you out." He lifted her into his arms, ignoring the heat and smoke burning his skin. She tried to protest, weakly pressing against his chest. "Marcus, you can't carry me and fight the fire." "Watch me," he growled. The ceiling above them cracked, pieces of metal falling like knives. The ship's lights dimmed, the air filled with the hiss of escaping oxygen. Every step felt like a battle, but Marcus didn't stop. He carried her through the flames, through the shaking corridors, his heart pounding like a drum of war. Behind them, the comms bay exploded. The blast threw him forward. He hit the ground hard, Sierra still in his arms. Pain ripped through his shoulder, but he didn't let go. He never would. Her voice was faint now, trembling. Marcus, listen. You must survive. The signal will bring help. He shook his head, his eyes burning. We both survive. Got it? Her silver eyes fluttered weakly open, and she whispered, almost smiling, You humans always promise impossible things. He pressed his forehead gently to hers, whispering, And sometimes we keep them. Outside, the stars watched silently, as the human and the alien fought to live, bound by a word once said in jest but now written in fire. The Aurora's reach was dying. Every corridor screamed with alarms. Smoke filled the air. The walls trembled as more blasts hit the ship. The once bright halls were now painted in red emergency light and shadows. Marcus Hale stumbled through the chaos, Sierra's fragile form in his arms. Her feathers, once silver and clean, were now scorched and dark. Each breath she took came out shallow and weak, but she was still conscious, still trying to speak. Put me down, she whispered. You'll fall. Not a chance, he said, his voice rough. You're not leaving me here. Her head rested weakly against his shoulder. You're stubborn. He tried to smile through the pain. That's a human specialty. The ship shook violently again, throwing him off balance. He hit a wall hard, groaning, but didn't loosen his grip. He looked down at her, her face pale, her eyes dimming like fading stars. Sierra, he said softly, stay with me. Just a little longer. Her lips moved faintly. The distress call was sent. Someone will come. He nodded, even though his throat felt tight. Good, then they'll find us, together. She opened her eyes slowly. Together, she repeated as if the word itself gave her strength. Marcus reached the emergency bay. The door was half jammed, sparks flying from broken panels. He kicked the release lever, forcing it open, and stepped inside. The escape pods were lined up against the far wall, only 2 left undamaged. He lowered Sierra carefully onto a seat near one of them. I'll launch us both out. We'll head toward the nearest moon. But she shook her head weakly. No, you go, Marcus froze. What? Her voice was quiet but steady. The ship's core is unstable. It will explode soon. You must leave now, he clenched his fists. I'm not leaving without you. Her silver eyes lifted to meet his, full of something deep. Sorrow, warmth, love. You must. No, he said, shaking his head. We're getting out together. She smiled faintly. Marcus, do you remember what you once said to me? He blinked. What are you talking about? You told me I'd be a cute wife. His breath caught. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That was a joke. She nodded slowly. Yes, a human joke, but I gave you my answer. Her fingers, trembling, reached up and touched the side of his face. The faint glow of her feathers brushed against his cheek. And now, I will keep that promise. Marcus shook his head desperately. No, don't you dare, but she smiled again. That soft, gentle smile that always disarmed him. You taught me what love sounds like, Marcus Hale. Let me show you what it looks like. Before he could stop her, she pressed a sequence on the pod's control panel. The hatch hissed closed, and with him inside, Sierra, he shouted, pounding on the glass. Open the door. That's an order. Through the glass, he saw her standing there, surrounded by the flickering light and smoke. Her feathers glowed faintly again, beautiful even in ruin. She leaned close to the window, her voice coming through the comm. You once told me humans use humor to hide pain, but I think you also use love to fight it. Tears stung Marcus's eyes. Don't do this, please, she shook her head gently. You gave me warmth in a cold universe. Let me give you a future in return. The countdown started. 10 seconds, Sierra. He yelled again, slamming his fists against the glass. Don't you leave me. Her eyes softened. Then listen, my human, she said softly. Let me be what you said I could be. A wife who protects her mate. The pod launched. The force threw Marcus back into his seat as the pod shot into space. The last thing he saw was Sierra standing in the flames, the ship collapsing around her. Then the light, bright, blinding, unswallowed everything. He screamed her name until his voice broke. Then there was silence. Hours passed. Maybe days. Time had no meaning in the void. Marcus drifted alone in the escape pod, the stars distant and cruelly calm. The distress beacon blinked quietly beside him. He stared at it, barely breathing. Then he looked at the ring she had given him. Not a real ring, just a loop of silver wire she had shaped for fun weeks ago. He wore it now around his wrist, his fingers brushed it gently. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "You really did." Outside the window, a faint light shimmered far away. Maybe a rescue ship. But Marcus didn't look at it. He kept his eyes on the stars where her light had vanished. And for the first time since the war, he cried. Not for loss, not for battle, but for love. The silence of space had never felt this heavy. Lieutenant Marcus Hale floated alone inside the small escape pod, surrounded by blinking lights, cold air, and memories that refused to fade. Outside, the stars burned bright and distant, beautiful, cruel, and completely indifferent. It had been 3 days since Aurora's reach was destroyed. 3 long, empty days since Sierra had sent him away. He still saw it every time he closed his eyes. Her standing in the fire, her silver feathers glowing in the flames, her soft voice saying, "Let me be what you said I could be." He had replayed it over and over, trying to believe it wasn't real, but the truth was written in the silence that surrounded him. She was gone. Marcus sat hunched forward, staring at the blinking distress signal on the console. It flashed steadily, one small pulse of hope in an endless sea of darkness. Each time it blinked, he imagined it was her heartbeat. He whispered into the emptiness, "You promised me you'd stay with me." But his voice cracked and the pod gave no answer. Sometimes he thought he heard her voice in the static, soft, musical, calm. "Marcus," it would whisper through the speakers, fading as quickly as it came. He knew it was just his mind playing tricks. Still, he found himself listening, hoping he hadn't eaten much. The emergency ration sat untouched beside him. What was the point? Every bite would only remind him she wasn't there to scold him for skipping meals, or to tell him that humans were strange for feeding on sadness instead of food. The silence pressed harder. It wasn't the peaceful kind anymore. It was a silence that hurt, one that filled every corner of his chest. He leaned back against the cold metal wall and stared at the tiny window above. The stars shimmered faintly, scattered like dust across an endless ocean. Somewhere out there, he thought, her light might still be drifting, just one more piece of starlight in the void. He took off his glove and touched the small loop of silver wire around his wrist, the one Sierra had made. It was bent and scratched now, but still whole. "I never told you," he whispered. "I never told you what I felt." He closed his eyes and the memories came back like gentle waves. Her laughter, her curious questions, her calm voice saying words that always felt too wise for him. He remembered how she tilted her head when she didn't understand a joke, how her feathers caught the light, how her voice grew soft whenever she said his name. He remembered the warmth of her hand against his. The way she looked at him that last time, not afraid, not sad, just peaceful, and then he broke. Tears slid down his face, silent, hot, unstoppable. He pressed his fist against his chest as if trying to hold his heart together. "You didn't have to save me," he whispered. "We could have made it. Both of us, but deep down he knew that was who she was. That was what she meant when she said she would protect him." Hours passed, maybe days. Time blurred in the darkness. He drifted in and out of sleep, haunted by flashes of her voice, her smile, her final words. Then, one day, a faint sound cut through the silence. A distant signal, sharp and metallic. Marcus blinked, startled. He leaned forward, pressing a button on the console. A voice crackled through the static. "Rescue vessel Serenity to escape pods 04. We've received your signal. Hold position. We're coming for you." Marcus stared at the speaker, his heart pounding. Someone had heard her call. Someone had answered her sacrifice. When the rescue ship finally docked and pulled him out, Marcus could barely stand. The crew helped him into the light, their faces full of pity. He didn't speak. He couldn't. As the medics checked him, he looked through the window of the Serenity. Out there, far beyond the debris field, a soft shimmer moved through the starlight. Faint, silver, like feathers caught in wind. For a moment, he thought it was her. Just watching. Just making sure he was safe. He smiled through the tears. "You kept your promise, Sierra," he whispered. "You always do." That night, as he lay in the infirmary, the silence returned. But this time it was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of her. Sometimes he swore he could hear her voice in the soft hum of the engines, calm and tender. Humans burn bright, even when they break. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since the explosion, sleep came peacefully, because even though she was gone, he knew her light was still out there, in the stars and the silence, and somewhere deep within him, and the void didn't feel quite so lonely anymore. Years passed. The war ended. The stars grew quiet again. Lieutenant Marcus Hale was no longer a soldier. His hair had turned gray at the edges, and the scars on his hands told stories no words could. Yet the one story that lived deepest in him was never written in any report. It was the story of a voice that once spoke softly in the darkness, a voice that had taught him what love truly meant. After the loss of Aurora's Reach, Marcus stayed with the rescue fleet for a while, helping rebuild what had been destroyed. But everywhere he went, the stars reminded him of her. The reflection of light on metal, the sound of static in his headset, everything whispered her name. When the new colonies were formed, the Council offered Marcus a choice: to lead a new outpost on a peaceful world shared by both humans and Therians. He said yes without hesitation. He wanted to start again, not for himself, but for her. The planet they gave him was beautiful, full of green valleys and soft winds. The Therians named it Sira's Rest. The humans agreed. It was the least they could do for the one who had sent the final distress signal that saved them all. Marcus spent his first morning there alone, standing on a hill overlooking a wide, shining lake. The sunrise was soft, golden, and quiet, the kind of light that didn't burn, only warmed. He carried with him a small box, old and worn from years of travel. Inside it lay the piece of silver wire she had shaped with her delicate hands. It was bent and tarnished now, but to him, it was worth more than gold. He knelt down and buried it under the first tree he planted, a tall, pale one with silver-green leaves that shimmered when the wind touched them. "This is for you," he whispered. "You said you'd protect me even when the stars go dark. Well, the stars are bright again. You did it." For a long while he sat there, watching the breeze move through the leaves. They made a soft chiming sound, almost like her laughter. People began to settle around the lake. Humans and Therians worked side by side, building homes and gardens. The air filled with new songs, both alien and human, blending into something that felt like peace. Marcus became a quiet leader, guiding with patience instead of orders. He was kind, calm, and wise, traits that reminded everyone of the Therian woman whose name the planet carried. Sometimes at night, he'd walk to the hill alone and sit beneath the tree. The stars would shimmer above, reflected in the lake like endless memories. He would close his eyes and listen, and sometimes when the wind was right, he swore he could hear her voice, faint but clear. "You humans always promise impossible things." He'd smile, whispering back, "Yeah, but sometimes we keep them." One evening, many years later, a young Therian child came to visit him. She had bright silver feathers and curious eyes, just like Sira once did. She carried a notebook and asked shyly, "Elder Marcus, can you tell me about the woman this world was named after? The one who saved everyone?" He smiled gently and nodded. "She was the bravest soul I ever met," he said softly. "She wasn't human, but she understood humanity better than most of us. She believed that love wasn't about what we say. It's about what we do when everything falls apart." The girl listened, eyes wide. "Did you love her?" Marcus looked out toward the sunset where the sky burned orange and silver. "Yes," he whispered, "and I still do." The child tilted her head, feathers catching the light. "Do you think she can hear you?" He smiled faintly. "Every time the wind moves through the trees, I think she's answering." That night, when the stars rose again, Marcus sat beneath the silver-leaved tree for the last time. The air was cool and calm. The lake glowed softly under the twin moons. He closed his eyes, feeling the breeze brush against his face, soft, like feathers. And in that silence, he heard her voice once more, gentle, steady, and full of warmth. "A wife protects her mate, always." A tear slid down his cheek as he whispered, "And a human keeps her memory alive." The wind answered with a sound like laughter, light and kind. The leaves above him shimmered brighter than ever, glowing faintly silver, as if the stars themselves bowed their heads. When the dawn came, the settlers found Marcus sitting peacefully under the tree, his face calm, a small smile on his lips. They buried him there, beneath the same tree where he had placed her keepsake, so they would rest together under the same sky. And for years after, when the wind passed through the valley, the leaves of the tree would sing softly, like two voices joined as one. No one ever doubted what they heard, because on Sira's rest, love was not just a memory. It was the wind. It was the stars. It was the promise that even across worlds, even across death, a bond born from one simple human joke could teach the universe what love truly meant.